In the middle of the 15th century, there was a book published in the Netherlands, which became and has remained the most read Christian book after the Bible. It was called The Imitation of Christ. And it was built on the idea that St. Paul so beautifully gives us in his letter to the Philippians, how God, out of love and compassion and concern, became part of his own creation in order to save us from our waywardness and sins. The imitation of Christ was a call for us to imitate the way Jesus lived his human life so as to return to true friendship with his Father. But that imitation is posited on another imitation. The fact that, as Paul says in Philippians, that God became one of us. In other words, God himself becomes a human being and imitates the way we live our life, which led eventually, of course, to his brutal crucifixion and death at the hands of the people he came to live among. We always think of the results of Christ living among us, of God's love manifesting itself in the person of Jesus in his death and crucifixion. But Jesus imitated us in his entire life. And he put up with all those things that we put up with among ourselves and cause for each other, all those sufferings, like rejection, feeling rejected by others whom we wished respected us. He put up with family misunderstanding. Remember when he was a teenager and his parents didn't understand what he was about. He put up with rejection by the people of his own town, as we heard in the gospel today. All of this is part of the imitation of God, God imitating human life so that he could call us back into the life which he enjoys with Jesus and the Spirit. And we're called to imitate the way God lived our life. That is what Christianity is all about. And we are strengthened to do so not only by our own efforts, but because the Spirit of Jesus, who came to live among us, has been poured into us and strengthens us, as Paul says in the second reading, that our weakness is no obstacle to the power of God, provided that we are willing to imitate the way Jesus lived human life among us, even though that will bring ultimately some form of suffering and dying to self. So as we enter into this long period of learning how to be disciples, as we continue Sunday after Sunday to listen to Jesus and to understand what he's trying to say to us and what he's imitating in the way he lived his life, we remember that we do so in the context of the Eucharist, where the very Christ that we're trying to imitate enters into our life in a almost physical way so that we can have the courage and the endurance to continue living in imitation of Christ, because when we imitate him, we are living the life of the Trinity.